think players want to get better, and they want to be coached. And, you know, I think the relationships are what allows you, you know, to coach them effectively. And so, and those things, again, it's part of the reason I wanted to start now.
Welcome in, Hawks fans. It's your boy Bryce Lewis coming back for another episode of just Quin Snyder being hired as the Atlanta Hawks head coach. It has been made official yesterday. I thought I was going to get this video up last night, but got busy, so I'm doing it now. But just want to get my thoughts on the move, and, you know, something we've seen coming for now a week now. They've been talking since last week about, you know, getting a deal done and trying to make him the coach of this team to coach the rest of the season and the next few years after that. So my initial reaction is that Quin is considered one of the top 10 best coaches in the league. And for a franchise that has had two coaches that their fan base probably considers one of the bottom half of the worst coaches in the league, I'm sure a lot of fans are rejoicing right now over the hiring of Quin. Remembering what he did in Utah with those Utah Jazz teams, exceeding expectations really a lot of the time with the talent that they had. I mean, if you think about those teams, you had Donovan Mitchell, a star player, but your second and third option was Joe Ingles and Bogdanovich. Like, let's be honest here. Like, let's be real here. That's not winning a championship. Like, let's just be completely honest. And, you know, I've talked about it before. He maximized that team's potential. You know, he said, we got shooters, we have one star, and we have a defensive anchor. So we're going to shoot a lot of threes. We're going to play defense because Rudy can anchor the defense, and that obviously alters shots for other teams and things like that. And we have a dynamic guard who can give us that occasional 30, 40, 50-point game. And that's usually the formula that he used every day for that team, and that's why they were able to have success. That's why they were the number one seed one year in the Western Conference. Because of that, they played with a lot of effort. They played with a lot of energy. They were top 10 in defense, and top 10 in offense, and everything under the sun. And so now he's coming to Atlanta. People are asking, is this probably maybe one of the best rosters he's ever coached? I'd have to go with yes. I feel like from a depth perspective and from an options perspective, it's best. Trae Young, you know, it depends on, you know, who you are, but some people may consider Trae Young better than Donovan Mitchell as a one. And then your two is better than Joe Ingles or Bogdanovich. It's DeJounte Murray. So you immediately already have two top players are better than what you had when you were in Utah immediately. And then I think Atlanta has a lot of depth. Obviously, they may not have the same Rudy Gobert type of defensive anchor, but Clint Capella is really good. Okongwu's really good on defensive end as well. So they have some talent. You know what I'm saying? The Hawks have slowly improved their shooting throughout the year, adding Bey, Bogdanovich, AJ Griffin being a really solid shooter, things like that. All those guys really playing well, doing some good things right now, especially coming out of the All-Star break. You know, Hawks played 2 games, won 2 games. Game winner yesterday against the Brooklyn Nets. Tough game. You know what I'm saying? There's some things obviously need to be worked on, but there's some good things and they were ready to come out with a victory. So I'm curious to know what the team's going to look like moving forward. And more importantly, because Snyder's going to be on the sidelines tomorrow. What's interesting for me in that situation is, how is he going to coach? Like, for the most part, I'm not saying he's never talked to these players before in his life, but he doesn't know these players like that. Like, usually, if this was a normal head coaching hire, this happened over the offseason, and he'll get to know the players. He'll see how the players' habits are, see what he likes, what he doesn't like, and then he'll make decisions based off that. He's having to do that on the fly while in the heat of trying to make the playoffs. So that's a tough ask to ask him to do. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see how that kind of turns out in that situation, how that reflects. Because, you know, Joe is going to have to probably be his point man in terms of, you know, players and, you know, what guys can do and who does he like. And I'm sure he's going to also allow Joe to keep coaching maybe a little bit more than Nate did while he was there, just because, again, he's more familiar with the players. Players like playing for Joe for the 2 games they did, so I don't see any issues there. We'll see if after the season Quin has any plans for him to stay on his coaching staff after this year. But I'm sure initially he may have to rely on him just in terms of getting to know the players, habits, et cetera, things like that. So then he can figure out what his rotations are going to be and what he feels like this team needs to be successful moving forward. Because it's hard to implement a new system mid-season. So that'll be an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on with the team to see if what is his vision for the rest of this year. You know, what does he want with this team now? Does he feel like I could step in and immediately make them a contender? We don't know. We'll have to see how this team responds to him. I mean, we saw the conversation Friday when Cleveland played Atlanta. You know, Donovan Mitchell talked to Trae Young And Donovan told him, like, hey, like, you're gonna like him. Like, he's the reason why I am who I am today. He's the reason why I got paid $200 million. He's the reason why Rudy Gobert got paid $200 million. So they praised his development. He loves to teach. He loves to coach. He makes players take accountability, and that's the one thing Nick McMillan did not do. And that's why you heard when they were looking for a head coach, that's what they wanted, and that's why he was number one on the list. Now, one thing I want to address before I get into anything else and how this may impact certain guys is, Snyder's playoff record, 21-29 in the playoffs. A lot of people look at that and say, oh, maybe he's not a good playoff coach. Maybe he's just a regular season coach. I actually did research. I did research on his playoffs. So, three of those losses came to peak Warriors and peak Rockets. I believe he also played the Clippers. Let me look it up right now, actually. I believe he played the Clippers, and they lost that series as well. And this was with Paul George. I think Kawhi was out for that series, I believe. It was Paul George, and the Clippers made it basically to the Western Conference Finals, I believe. I could be completely wrong about this, but I believe they did make it to the Western Conference Finals. And, for the most part, I'd always say this. He lost to who he was supposed to lose to. Like, who we thought were going to advance to the playoffs, he lost to them. And who he was supposed to be, he beat. His best playoff series win was probably beating the Oklahoma City Thunder team with Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony in the first round. Outside of that, he's lost to KD's Warriors. He's lost to Houston, Harden and Paul. He's lost to the Clippers, that team with Mann and Paul George. The only series that a lot of people may say he should have probably won was the Dallas series when Luka was out a few games. But that's when Jalen Brunson was playing really well. So for the most part, I've always said as a playoff coach, it's hard. It's hard to have a good playoff record and in this league, because unless you're making deep runs all the time, it's easy to just get behind the 8 ball early and have a losing record. And in the Western Conference, he was going against a dynasty and a team that wanted to take down the dynasty. And think, like I said, their second best player was Rudy Gobert. What did you honestly expect? He's going against James Harden and Chris Paul. He's going against KD and Steph, or Steph and Clay. He's going against Paul George. He's going against Paul George and them. Like, what are we expecting in those situations? Like, you can be a great coach, but there's only so much a great coach can do. If you ain't got the talent, you ain't got the talent. I mean, that's just simple as I can put it to you. So for me, that's why I don't really look at the playoff record and criticize him for it. Because, I mean, what was he supposed to do with what he had? He maximized it. And when he maximized it in the playoffs, he went against teams better than him in his squads. And you saw the result. They ended up losing. So Atlanta, I would say, from a talent perspective at least, just from a talent perspective, has more talent than those teams. Now, we can sit here and still say they're not better than Boston or Milwaukee or whatever, but some people may feel good saying, I think we can take Philadelphia, because Philadelphia, we feel like, chokes a lot. And, we don't know what Cleveland's a young team. They don't have experience outside of Mitchell. So maybe those are the two teams that we feel confident we're matched up with in the first round we could take. So, I mean, these are things that I think people are going to bring up and try to discuss about the playoff record, but I don't have an issue with it. I mean, like I said, he did what he was supposed to do. So I'm not going to be tripping about that. But I think biggest players who are going to get impacted, obviously, first is Trey. I mean, a lot of people feel like Trey is uncoachable. He's a coach killer. I mean, Quin's going to coach Trey. And so we'll see how Trey responds. He coached Donovan, and Donovan responded well. Now we'll see how Trey responds to the coaching of Quin Snyder. And I personally don't think Coach Trey is uncoachable. I just think he gets to a place with certain coaches where it's like, if it's just not clicking anymore, then that's where issues arise. But if he respects you, I don't see why he wouldn't want to coach. Why would he wouldn't take coaching? I don't understand that. So, that's why I don't really feel like that's a big issue. I'm curious to see his rotations. Joe, the last couple of games has, I feel like he's done a really good job with his substitutions. with guys, getting guys minutes, getting guys time, someone's hot, let him play a little bit longer, just making sure everybody's good to go. So at all times, and getting who he feels like he needs on the floor for particular matchups, like the Brooklyn game. He had Bey and Okongwu close the game. JC was on a minutes restriction, but this is the second straight game that I think Okongwu closed. And I think that's because he's realizing, Kongu's, feeling it. He's a better offensive player, has more touch around the rim, good energy guy, more of a better lateral defender. He maybe wants that against the Nets, who were throwing out their five when Claxton went out the game. Royce O'Neal and Cam Johnson. Okongwu is a better matchup in that situation than if, Claxton's out there. I always say Clint Capella is a stationary center. He goes against other stationary centers. Those are good matchups. He goes against centers who can move, a little bit more athletic, stretch guys. He struggles a little bit more. So Okongwu is a good guy to put in there in those situations if the team wants to go to a lineup like that. So I'm happy about the Snyder deal. I'm curious to see how, like I said, the team responds. I'm curious to see what he tries to implement in the season. I'm curious to see how the players respond, and I'm curious to see what that leads to. Like I said, the Hawks are in the heat of a tough playoff race. They're trying to see if they can maybe somehow get above the play-in line. Right now, I feel like they're going to be firmly a play-in team, but can they get to the Knicks? Can they get above them and get that sixth spot and get out of play-in? We'll have to see. We have no idea. And Snyder's going to be tasked with trying to do that with his team. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But like I said, excited to do it. Give me y'all thoughts on this hiring of Quin Snyder. Are y'all excited? Are you not excited? Why or why not? Leave them down in the comments below, wherever you're seeing this at. Completely works for me. But yeah, guys, so if you also want to catch up with me and any more of my Hawks takes, keep it up with the team, what's happening with the team, reaction to games, videos, more like this on my YouTube, subscribe, or follow me on Twitter at Bryce_2K for more Hawks news and updates. But it's your boy Bryce Lewis. I'll see you next time.